Hello and welcome to this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and as we wrap up the year, our final rotation member here today, it's actually his last appearance on the program. State Representative Paul Schmid joining us in studio today. Thanks for coming in. It just so happened that the last show of the year is you, as you're wrapping up your legislative career. Thank you for coming in as always.
Well, thank you for your report, Jim. I always feel that if people watch your report, they get a certain perspective on what's going on up at the State House that maybe you wouldn't get otherwise.
I think it's good. I mean, the great thing is all you folks, the delegation, come in and talk, a couple times a year, and I think that's gets your message out, and that people do get to know what's going on up there. Yeah. But how are you feeling, though? You got a few weeks to go, and then it's over.
Well, I'll tell you,
14 years.
Yeah, 14 years. I'm going to wake up January 1st, and I'm going to say to myself, damn, that was a foolish idea. But the fact is, it's been an honor to serve, and it's been a privilege. But there are other, when you're doing public service in an elected position, it's 24/7. There are things you can't do. There are things my wife asks, could we do this, could we do that, I've had to say no. And now people ask me, well, what are you going to do? And I tell them, whatever my wife wants.
I was just going to say, you and I were joking that the honey-do list is growing pretty big there.
She has some plans for me, Jim.
You said she has some ideas, and that's always scary when the wife has ideas like that. But no, congratulations. It's the one thing I never asked you is what prompted you to run in the first place. I mean, you were a selectman in Westport. You'd been served the town for a long time, but
yeah, I had a number of. I've been on a number of committees in town going back 40, 50 years, and then I was elected a selectman. And a year after that, Michael Roderick's, Joan Menard, Senator Menard, retired, left public service. Senator, Senator State Rep, Rodericks decided to go for the Senate seat. And I just thought to myself, gee, why shouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
And
no grand plan or anything like that?
No, I just thought, here's another way of serving Westport. I love Westport, and I'm passionate about the South Coast. And I thought this is another way to perhaps be able to serve. So.
And you and I have talked about this in the past, but again, I think you have one of the most unique districts because you do have to deal with urban issues because you do represent both Fall River and New Bedford, parts of it, but as you've said before, just because you represent part of it, all the issues affect you.
You got to be all in.
Yeah. And then you've got the rural communities, Westport and Acushnet and Freetown. So I mean, you've got a very diverse portfolio that you have to deal with in that district.
Yes.
Which has got to be, I got to be honest, it's got to be kind of fun.
It is. And you've got to be ready to listen to people, which I always try to do. And it's just been great, particularly being part of the New Bedford delegation. People down here are pretty lucky. We've got very long-serving, wonderful public servants.
Well, you guys all work together, too. I mean, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
You got Senator Montigny, you got Tony Cabral, Chris Hendricks, Bill Strauss is retiring with me.
Yeah.
He's been such a champion for transportation. He was very important in getting South Coast Rail back here. Of course, we all worked very hard on that, but that's one of the things that I look back on feeling good about having done. And then Chris Markey from Dartmouth, having a piece of New Bedford, and it's been really a great delegation. I've been very fortunate to serve with the people that I have served.
It's probably gone by like a flash, though.
If time flies like an arrow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the one thing too with your, we've talked about this in the past. You're chairman of the Agriculture Committee.
Yes.
Which, when you think about it, it's a pretty important committee here for your district because of the communities you represent, the farming communities that you represent. But as you and I were talking about, just statewide, there's a lot of agriculture issues that people don't. If you live in New Bedford, you're not really thinking of agriculture. Yeah. It's important, but you're not thinking about it. And there's a lot of issues that have to be decided. And there was no committee before you came.
That's correct. We never had an agriculture committee in Massachusetts. Now we do really appreciate Speaker Mariano doing that. appreciate being the first chair. You mentioned people in New Bedford don't think too much about agriculture. And that's part of what we've tried to do around the state, is to bring more local, healthy food into our urban areas, into our schools, and into our underserved areas. I always point out to people that in Massachusetts, we're only producing 3% of what we eat.
Right.
So that means we're kind of at a risk to droughts in the Midwest and fires in California.
And you've also promoted the for lack of a word, pocket gardens, pocket parks, some of those type of things in the cities, both in New Bedford and Fall River, to grow food.
Yeah,
even in small places.
Love to see that going on in vacant lots.
Right.
And all of a sudden they start producing, and they become places where you can get out of the heat a little bit and feel the earth between your toes. That's very important. So I think agriculture is should be part of everybody's everyday life, and that we should be producing more of the food we eat here in Massachusetts.
Talk a little about, I would assume then your vice chair, who I don't know, but your vice chair would be kind of first in line to succeed you in that role.
I hope so. That's Natalie Blay. She's from out in Deerfield. She's been a real champion for agriculture, and I know that I hope that she will pick up the torch and move with it. You know, our New Bedford schools do a great job in purchasing local, and then
yeah, you've talked about that.
we have a commissary now that we got some state money for, and they're able to produce more scratch-made food, healthy food for our kids. What's better than that?
One of the things you talked about too, as far as agriculture, is trying to get the fishing industry under that umbrella, if you will.
Yes.
Where does that stand right now? I know that's been, other people, I know Representative Cabral talked about that too.
Yeah, Tony's been a big advocate of that, and I'm hoping that in the next term we can continue to make progress. This last term, all the fishing bills came to the Agriculture Committee, but it would be great to add fishing to the committee's title, agriculture and fishing, because it's really fishing families and farming families have the same issues.
I mean, you've talked about, and I know that Representative Cabral have talked about it. It's really important to have fishing in, I guess, some designation, if you will. It really should, and both of you are saying agriculture's committee is the one to go to.
Yeah. Well, it's our original industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and the challenge is that right now, most of what we catch gets exported. Great. Scallops, big demand for scallops in Europe. Great. But most of what we eat is imported from fishing factories in Vietnam and China. We should be figuring out how to eat the fish we do catch here. So.
And that's something that you said that the speaker has sway over. He's the one that could put the fishing issues into the agriculture, or into the name of that committee.
Yeah, because he's already put the issues into the Ag Committee. Now it's just a matter of putting the words into the title of the committee, so which I guess you could say would be an important validation.
Yeah.
But we're getting the work done now as it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, especially when you look at, there's a lot of communities that rely. I mean, New Bedford's got the richest port, but you've got Gloucester and Chatham, and there's other ports.
Yeah. Westport.
Yeah, Dartmouth has a little. I mean, there's other communities that obviously work in the fishing industry. So
Sure.
to have that designation would be important, I think, too.
We've got 15 commercial boats docked in Westport, and they do all kind of fishing: scallops, ground fish, lobstering, and there's young people buying boats now. So fishing, it's always been important to Westport, and it continues to be important. So it's not just New Bedford. You're right.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit too here. Is the past few weeks you've been busy because the session, while the formal session is ended, you're in informal session, and for people that don't know, that means issues can still be taken up. You need everybody there pretty much. If one person, I think, says no, then it doesn't come up.
That's true.
But you did pass recently the Economic Development Bill, the
Yes.
$4 billion, which was the last time you were here, you talked about that. The Clean Energy Bill, which was something that we've talked about, did get passed. The Maternal Health Bill got passed. Talk a little bit, just kind of summarize those things. It took a while, but those, you specifically, the last show we did, you talked about economic development and the Clean Energy Bill, that they needed to get passed this session.
Yeah. And kudos to us for getting it done. It's never easy to pass a bill because the more, you've got to have a lot of conversations, because you've got to think through all the unintended consequences of what you're trying to do. And the more conversations you have amongst the electeds and amongst all the various advocacy groups, the more conversations you have, the better is the output. And we sometimes get criticized for not getting things done by July 31st, which has been traditionally, it's not written in the Constitution, but traditionally it's been the end of the formal session in the second year of each term. And this year we had a number of important issues that you've just mentioned that were still being talked about on the morning of August 1st when we finished our formal session, and they still and they have emerged.
How pleased were you to see, like I said, the last time we were here, you talked about the economic bill. You said this has to get passed because, you know, Greater New Bedford, Greater Fall River are going to benefit from this.
Yes.
And clean energy, obviously, with the wind energy, the focus down here on how important clean energy is. You said that
the energy bill was very important for the state. It's going to help build our infrastructure. We need to upgrade our electric lines. We're going to be carrying so much of our energy over those electric lines rather than through pipes underground, and they have to be upgraded, and the bill that we passed will provide significant funds for that. It'll also allow us to start making investments again in nuclear energy, and nuclear energy has to be part of our toolkit. It's changed since
and you and I were
Chernobyl.
talking off camera. I mean, you know, as a kid, you remember Chernobyl, you remember 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
Those were disasters.
Yeah, you'll never forget them.
Right.
But it's changed, and now the technology allows for smaller nuclear plants where the risk is substantially less. And we need to, you know, France gets 50% of its energy from nuclear energy, and we need to have a lot of things in our toolkit, including offshore wind.
And hypothetically, because if the plants are smaller, would a plant have to be, for example, somewhere in southeastern Massachusetts in order to serve the people of the area?
Yeah. Well, if you build up your infrastructure good enough, a plant in western Massachusetts, where there's less population, less dispersed population, could easily serve the south coast. So
but that's a lot.
Yeah, that's why,
like you said, that's a lot of infrastructure, though. I mean, just
that's why we need to build up the infrastructure.
Yeah. I know that one of the things with the climate bill too includes, and you and I were chatting about this off camera, about it curbs natural gas, the needs for natural gas, because you're trying to, I guess the whole point is you're trying to get those clean energy bills, clean energy things that you want instead of the natural gas. So like getting rid of one or weaning off one and trying to go in a different direction.
Yeah, I like to think of it as we got to have natural gas. I mean, if we turned off the natural gas pipeline, we'd be awful cold this winter. But the important thing is building up the alternative sources of energy so that we can gradually wean ourselves off. But the biggest issue that I find in my constituents is they're concerned about their utility bills. And whatever we do, we've got to strike the balance between investing in new alternative sources of energy and keeping utility bills down.
So talk a little bit about that from your experience and up there. I mean, electric bills, I mean, you're kind of at the whim of N-Star, or whatever your electric company is. I mean, they go up in the winter and down in the summer or what have you. But how can you lower the electric bills? Is it the wind energy and the nuclear and all this stuff that we'd like to get, supplementing the electric usage?
The more sources of energy you have, the cheaper will be the price of your electricity. There was one project that I worked on quite a bit a couple of years ago, and it's still being worked on, and that was attaching ourselves to Quebec, where they have a lot of hydropower. And the great thing about hydropower is that if we get a cold night in New Bedford and we need more electricity, they can upgrade that hydropower just by flipping a switch, by allowing more water to come down the chute and drive the turbines. So that's the kind of instant-on energy supply that we really need. And that the whole project has kind of been held up by how to bring a power line down through New Hampshire. There was kind of controversy. Maybe it's down through Maine. But if we could make that happen, that would really give us a very valuable alternative source of power for when it gets really cold in the winter or really hot in the summer.
You talk about, I was thinking while you're talking too, I mean, there's such a push on electric cars, electric vehicles. I don't know how does that translate to industries like farming? Does electric vehicles, is that something that help? I mean, because you're a conservationist, you're a land person yourself, and you're trying, you certainly want to keep the land as healthy as you can. Yeah. But are we doing enough electric vehicle-wise? Because I don't know if, I don't see a lot of people still buying electric cars.
Yeah, out in California, you see a lot of electric
They have to,
cars
though, because
here.
they've got the...
Their prices of gasoline are so expensive. It's nothing to pay $5 a gallon for gas out there. I think that, you see it in your landscapers. You see that they're starting to use more and more electric leaf blowers and electric lawn mowers. And I was just quizzing one who serves our neighbor. And he said, the batteries are such that we can run a lawnmower now maybe 6 or 7 hours a day without recharge, and that's what they need. Haven't seen that yet on the farm.
But you're seeing that at least somewhat in that sort of industry, landscaping and what have you.
So it's coming. You can tell that. Plus, it's quieter, better for the environment. So.
And I would imagine that if it reaches the farming, again, we're talking technology, we're talking industry. I don't know if that increases your cost, lowers your cost, but I would assume it's better for the land.
Well, it's certainly better for the air we breathe. And as a farmer, I'm very aware of what my costs are.
Yeah.
They're right up to here.
Yeah.
So we hope that that kind of technology will be good for our pocketbook as well as for the environment.
You talked about something, and we were talking off camera about it, which I thought, you mentioned about the infrastructure needs to improve for, you mentioned for farming, now we mentioned the infrastructure for, utilities or whatever. We do really need a lot of infrastructure improvements. I'm generically speaking right now, which it sounds like what we're talking about too. It would help us in the long run, but that initial cost has got to be so expensive.
That's right. Well, a lot of what President Biden's infrastructure, what was it, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, that money was directed at our energy infrastructure. And you read that although incoming President Trump may not be totally in favor of some of those investments, a lot of the legislators whose districts are benefiting from that money are saying, well, let's not throw it out.
Right.
Take a look, see what's keep what's good and reduce what's bad, but they feel it's good.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot that we could do.
Yeah.
You've still got some things in limbo up there too, and I'm kind of curious. We were chatting about this, prepping for the show here, but a couple of things. I know there's an opioid piece of legislation. Obviously, you know how much opioid has impacted a lot of families here in New Bedford, Fall River. I know the same
my
way.
heavens, yeah. Yep. Well, and it's not just a urban.
No.
Yeah.
Prescription drug legislation that you were saying, we'd really like to get that done because costs are just prohibitive. People can't get some of the medications that they need right now.
Those prescription benefit managers, from what you read, are just skimming money off of our backs, and we need to do something about it. And we've got a bill that would do something about that. I don't know. I know it's being worked on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've talked about in the past, that's a huge issue. One of the shows you were talking about for seniors, that's a huge issue that you've been, people have talked to you about, the cost of the prescription drugs, because there's a lot of people that can't, they have the bare minimum in their health care plan. So even the cost is prohibitive for them at that point in time. Sure. Talk a little bit about that, though. I mean, do you think there's momentum to get something to help lower the cost for those folks that, you're talking to them every day?
Yeah, I do. What is it, December 3rd right now? There's still 4 weeks, 28 days left. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something passing. There's also a big medical bill that would try to prevent another issue happening like what we've just suffered through with
the hospital.
the hospitals.
Yeah. Which impacted your district. Well, a lot of us, because it was in Fall River.
Well, St. Anne's.
Yeah.
And I was just at a event a couple of weeks ago. The governor came down, and the folks from what is now Brown Health, who have now taken over St. Anne's, came. And they are truly dedicated to a patient-oriented medical system rather than a profit-oriented. I don't see how we can allow for-profit hospitals, but that's another topic.
Discussion.
Now, St. Anne's will again be a not-for-profit hospital run by people who really care about patients, and we're just very pleased to see that happen.
And Hawthorne Medical, was owned by the same group.
Yes, and they, I think, have been sold to somebody. We'll
My
see
understanding,
how that.
there's a proposal, I think, that somebody's looking to buy it. But there's a lot of people that both you and I know who belong to that hospital or that medical group. Yeah.
Well, thank God we've got St. Luke's here in New Bedford, and we're just so lucky to have the quality of health care that they give. You don't have to go to Boston anymore. You can get everything you need done right
It was
here.
interesting going through the St. Anne's thing with the other hospitals that were owned by it, that I didn't realize how many hospitals had closed in Massachusetts. It's the healthcare industry's, when you look at the hospital, that's a tough business. I don't know if it's bad business management on the part of the hospital groups that have closed, but there's less people now, there's less places people can get served, and I would think that more people are going into medical care.
That's a big issue, Jim. We've really got two tiers here in Massachusetts. You've got your teaching hospitals out of Boston. Fabulous. We're, best in the world. Wonderful. And then you've got your community hospitals, like St. Luke's, like Charlton. And most of their patients are Medicare and Medicaid patients, where the reimbursement is not as generous as it is for patients who go on a private plan and go to the teaching hospitals. And that really is the big issue. And Speaker Mariano, who comes from Quincy, so he knows all about community hospitals, has really been focused on that issue of protecting our Charlton and our St. Luke's hospitals. And that's one of the things that this current hospital bill that's being worked on would do. So,
And those hospitals are, arguably just as important, if not more important, to their communities because they are it. Versus Boston, where you've got different hospitals.
They are. And one of the, so those teaching hospitals would love to expand into the communities, but then you've only got them, and you need to have a community hospital as well. So supporting the St. Luke's of this world is very important to the legislature, and I'm sure you'll see a bill. If it doesn't come out in the next 4 weeks, I'm sure it'll come out next term. I'm sorry I won't be part of that.
No, but it's interesting that you bring it up because it is such a, we just talked about some of the things. A lot of healthcare issues still need to be resolved, but the quagmire that is healthcare is just, you've talked about it before. You hear a lot of people talking to you about the cost of healthcare. And I don't know if there's certainly no magic wand, but we need to chip away at it to make it more affordable for people. I mean, there's a lot of people going to St. Luke's with no health care, and the hospitals
they provide it.
They provide the service, but
that is a cost to them.
Yeah,
that they're not reimbursed on, which the hospitals up in Boston, the teaching hospitals, don't necessarily have to the same extent. So, yeah.
We got a couple minutes left. Just want to give you a chance to sort of sum up your career here. And
oh my gosh!
We appreciate you coming in here. But favorite moment? Is there any piece of legislation that you're most proud of?
Well, that's a hard one. I think about getting South Coast Rail, and I look forward to being a passenger next May.
Yeah.
When I hope it happens. I think about the Student Opportunity Act, which has really helped New Bedford's cost structure. And then I think about a number of agriculture bills that I hope have helped local farming families and gotten more local healthy food into our schools. And then I just think of my colleagues, really good people. Yep.
I can't imagine, I mean, I know you'll not be in the legislature, but I can't assume that you'll be just on the sidelines. I don't know, is there anything, any piece of legislation or any issue that you're still going to be working on, passionate about, things that, you talked about healthcare, things that you wanted to get done, but you need help with that too. Yeah. Anything that you still want to be working on the sidelines?
Yeah, I'm still going to be pushing for our farming and fishing families and getting more locally caught and locally raised food into our schools. It's just been proven that the kids, actually, when you serve them great Brussels sprouts, good local Brussels sprouts, they love it, and it's good for them. So I'm a big believer in that, and I'm going to be doing all I can, particularly here in the South Coast, to support all the good people who are doing that.
Well, I thank you for coming in for these few years. I appreciate it, and we wish you the best down the road. Happy holidays to you as well.
Yeah, Jim, thank you very much. It's just been great. Appreciate
We will see you on the trail, I'm sure, every now and then.
You betcha.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall, the New Bedford Cable Network. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.